All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to our June YouTube Live monthly session. And if you guys are just first joining, thank you very much for joining our live session. We do these actually every single month, typically on a Tuesday on either the first or second week of the month. What is today? June 5th. So I think we hit that goal. And if you guys are coming back for a second time or a third or a fourth or maybe more, definitely big thanks for coming on. And typically in these YouTube Lives, we're actually going to go over some of the top news stories for a few minutes that we've seen in Rideshare over the past month. And there's definitely been a lot of good news stories, some of the latest app updates we've seen. And, I know today we already have some people talking about the Uber's new surge and Lyft primetime, which has been a big, really pain point for drivers. We'll have a lot about that. And then we're going to spend a majority of the time, probably 50 minutes, maybe more, answering your questions live right here on YouTube. So if you guys are watching live on YouTube right now, thank you very much for joining. My name is Harry, and feel free, I see a bunch of familiar faces in the comments right now. Jason, your driver, Mike, what's up, Mike? I always see Mike in here, so thank you very much. And today we've got Christian from the Rideshare Guy who just popped up onto the screen.
Howdy, folks.
Say hey. And he's going to be joining us. He's been looking at a lot of these new Uber new surge and Lyft primetime. And of course, he's a full-time driver and he now works with me at the Rideshare Guy, has done thousands of rides. He's based up in the Bay Area. I'm in Los Angeles. So it looks like we've got some people joining right now from San Diego, One Love in Chicago. Mike is in the Bay. Mike Arroyo in Tampa, Florida, Ron Kelly, Kansas City. Awesome. It's good to see a lot of the same names, but also I'm seeing a lot of new names. So definitely very cool. Looks like we're getting a good crowd today. So we're going to answer a lot of questions. And of course, as always, we're going to have a nice little giveaway at the end of my new book, The Rideshare Guide. Everything you need to know about driving for Uber, Lyft, and other ride-sharing companies. See, the title is so long, I don't even remember it. I had to actually look at the book. So Christian, do you have your copy of the book?
I do. Let me grab it. Oh, I don't know where I have it right now.
All right, so you failed that part of the test, but I know Christian does have a few books. I even autographed one for him.
I got a whole box of them.
Yeah, he's a special kid, but yeah, looks like Moises, hi Harry, love your book. Thanks for the great tips. Moises, awesome. Thank you very much. If you guys have already purchased the book, looks like we got a really good crowd. Tyler says the book is awesome. Oh, and by the way, okay, I talked so much about the book, I forgot to say, if you stay tuned to the end, we're gonna be doing a little giveaway where I'm actually gonna give out probably 2 or 3 books. All you'll need to do is just stay to the end and we'll have you email me and you can, we'll have a little giveaway there that's pretty easy to enter. Just send me a quick email, but you got to stay tuned at the end to figure out how to enter. So looks like we're up to 50 people watching live right now, which is awesome. I'm sure a lot more people will be joining. If you guys are watching live right now, either on desktop or your phone, you should be able to actually live chat. So if you're on desktop, it should be right there on the right side of the video. And if you're on your phone, you may have to scroll down a little bit and you'll be able to chat, ask me questions. Christian is also going to be on here, answering questions. And yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And of course, if you guys are watching the replay later, I believe YouTube now shows the live chat replay, which is pretty cool. So you'll be able to actually see all the chat that's happening in real time, even if you missed the YouTube live, but you obviously won't be able to participate. You can still leave a comment and we'll do our best to respond to that comment. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I want to cover some of the just top news we've seen in general in the past month. I know I saw this story that was all about, let's see, what was it? It was this UCLA study that came out, and basically what it said was that, and they focused on the Los Angeles area, and they said that, basically, drivers are struggling to make ends meet. It's specifically catered to LA. I actually went to this panel where they released the results, and I believe they interviewed 260 drivers in Los Angeles. So I'm gonna grab a link to it right here, and I'll share that in the chat right now. You guys can take a look at it. But basically it's saying, most drivers in the LA are working full time. One of the interesting things they found was that 50% of the drivers they surveyed, and these are all in-person surveys, remember, so they actually took rides with Uber drivers. They found that half of the drivers they surveyed were actually working full time or more. And a lot of them reported basically that they were kind of struggling to make ends meet and things like that. So definitely an interesting study. Christian, did you catch that one?
I didn't see the full study, but anecdotally, it does make a lot of sense. I mean, especially in LA right now, gas prices in California have really just skyrocketed. prices are pretty low in LA. So it hearing that half of drivers are working full time and a lot of them are struggling, not a big surprise for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think that we'll probably talk about some of these issues that the survey brought up. I mean, I think definitely, you're always one of the interesting things, right? Even though a majority of drivers, so if you look at, for example, 50,000 random drivers that are coming to my website or this YouTube channel, majority of them are actually going to be part-time. But when you think about it, who's actually going out and doing the rides and doing the work? Those full-time drivers are typically making up about 50% of the total hours or the total rides worked, right? It's kind of that 80-20 rule in effect. And I know in my 2016 survey, we have a good graph that kind of explains that. But yeah, gas prices are definitely a big issue. Andrew Lift says $4 a gallon here in San Diego. Jason said $3.97. I think I just filled up, Christian. I paid $3.90, $3.89 maybe. And I'm driving a new to me at least, family car SUV that I'm going to be trying on Uber Select. And the bill for that was to fill up, I think, was $85. It was pretty expensive. So
actually, wait. So you have a Select vehicle now?
Yeah, so I just my new family vehicle that we got because of the new baby.
Oh yeah.
We got from my mom, we got a new to us at least SUV, and it luckily qualifies for Uber Select. So we'll be able to try it out on Uber Select, but the gas bill is brutal. It looks like Zach says I pay $345 in Fresno, Chicago $350. Hey, that's actually not bad compared to here in California. Zach Farrell $339. How much are you paying right now, Christian? Or what's
so you see, we drove into SF last weekend, and I think I saw something to the tune of like $4.19 per gallon at the Chevron off of Oak or no. Yeah. So it's just, it was brutal. I only put 2 gallons in. It's like,
yeah, that's actually a good question. I'm curious to know for you guys, do you guys typically fill up your full tank, or do you fill up just partway? If you guys are NBA playoff fans, there was a funny segment with Shaquille O'Neal when he was talking about how he fills up only $20, but that's a little side story. Maybe I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. Zach says, try Arco. Yeah, Arco is definitely, obviously I found very cheap. You have to pay with a debit card or cash, but, lots of options. Obviously Gas Buddy is a great app for that too.
Yeah, great app for it. Arco, we don't have as many of them up here in the Bay Area. There's one Arco in San Francisco, and it does have the cheapest gas, but the line to get that gas is about 40 minutes. And it just goes right out into the road. It's pretty ridiculous.
Cool. And then, of course, Costco, is a great deal. And so we've got we've got a lot of content, honestly, on saving money on gas and the different options, the Uber Visa debit card. So if you guys head to the rideshareguy.com or even our YouTube channel, which you're looking at right now, you can definitely, learn more about that. And one other quick story that I want to mention before we talk about these new Uber and Lyft app updates is, I saw this. It's kind of a random story. I'm gonna share a link to it right now in the chat. But sorry, that's my. I got a little ahead of myself. But basically, this story is that Lyft is getting into the bike share business, and they're also looking at getting scooters. Lyft are looking at buying this company called Motivate, which operates City Bike and some other those bike share systems that you see all over the place. But basically, the gist of it is we just published this article on a company called Bird and what it's like to work as a charger for them. So if you guys haven't seen these, kind of what I like to refer as Razor scooters, but with an electric twist. These things are all over the place in LA and San Francisco. They just got banned in San Francisco and a bunch of other cities. And they're actually hiring a lot of on-demand gig workers. At the end of the night, when these scooters run out of battery, you can go out and collect them, charge them at your house overnight, and release them in the morning. So I know we've had a ton of interest from people. We have a couple articles on the site and a couple videos on YouTube, but this is definitely something to keep an eye on because it's one of these new services. And, when these services first launch, they have a ton of money and, they're everywhere. And, there's honestly, it may not be, that you can make a ton of money forever, but right now there's a lot of opportunity. Christian, I'm sure you've seen these things around, right?
Oh yeah. Where I live in Berkeley, though, Berkeley's outlawed all of the scooters. So all we have is Ford Go Bike. But as soon as I leave the city, there's Lime Bike, there's Spin everywhere. But going into San Francisco, they're kind of all gone for the time being until the ban is lifted or they get their licenses.
Yeah, definitely. So I shared a link to an article article we wrote about basically what it's like, really in depth about what it's like to be a charger for Bird. And yeah, like I said, definitely, you know, there's some growing pains like with any new service, but there's a lot of opportunity with these bike share, with these scooter shares. And, you know, if you're the type that likes new things, trying new things, sort of being a little bit of a guinea pig in a good sense, because, you know, there's not a lot of people that are signed up to be chargers, you know, when they first launch in a city. And, you know, honestly, it's a good gig. So like Uber and Lyft, a lot of people are going to end up signing up, and then the pay is going to go down. So definitely keep that in mind. And I think that's probably a good segue, that being a guinea pig, to our next topic about the new updates that we're seeing. I mean, I guess I call them updates, but they're really more of testing that's happening with Uber's new surge and Lyft's new prime time. And, you know, Uber has been testing this new surge in North Carolina, I believe, since last year, December. And Lyft is starting to test it now too. And, you know, it's kind of all coming to a head, and it really seems like, well, not seems, drivers are pissed about this, to be frank, in the cities where it is happening. You know, I'm here in LA, Christian is in San Francisco. We don't have it yet, but I already see that Andrew, Lyft, I think Andrew, actually, you emailed me. So cool to see you here on the chat, but I know Andrew's not a fan of it. And Christian, do you want to give a quick, very quick overview of what the new surge and Lyft prime time, that kind of new prime time that's being tested?
Right. So this new primetime is getting rid of or primetime or surge is getting rid of your typical multiplier on a ride. So as most of us in this channel are used to seeing, you know, you go to find a ride, and if you get a request on 2.0x, then you know the fare is going to be multiplied by 2x. The new surge is if you get a ride from within the surge and you get the surge, it only gives you, say, like a preset dollar amount. So it'd be, say, $2 or $5. Now, the new surge, it can have like some benefits in that, you know, when you go into the area where surge is happening, it sticks to you. So if surge goes away and you made it into the area, you still get that surge. It's just that it seems, you know, I've heard somebody call it penny surge, which I thought was really creative. But, you know, it's a little bit more guaranteed, but then like on these long rides, you just can't get like these big unicorn rides anymore. They're just really hard to get because, you know, the surge multiplier will be $5 or $10 versus maybe 2x of a $30 trip or 2x of a $60 trip. So that's where I think a lot of, like, you know, people are having trouble with it.
Yeah, no, that's a good summary of it. And so we're going to have a really detailed article out tomorrow on the rideshareguy.com. And Christian, I'll probably actually have you make a YouTube video for all of our viewers right now, so they can learn a little bit about what this new Uber surge that's coming, and also the new Lyft prime time that's being tested. And it just seems like this is kind of the writing on the wall, that these companies are going to be, they haven't done it yet. They're only testing it in a few markets right now, but I think it's unfortunately a pretty good bet that they're going to be rolling it out to everywhere. I saw someone ask, Anthony said, why are they doing that? And I mean, I think that really the goal behind it is to sort of smooth out drivers' earnings. Because I think a lot of times, you know, when you go out and you have the potential to make $200, or you have the potential some days you make only $100, you would rather just go out and make $150 every night. And so that's sort of what's happening here. But, you know, the rollout has not been the cleanest thing we've ever seen. And there's definitely some issues there, but we'll keep an eye on that and update you guys. So I think now, with the remaining, you know, about 45 minutes, I want to go ahead and get into the question and answer portion. So I see some good questions already coming in. A lot of stuff about gas right now, because gas prices are going up. So we can talk about gas. I saw some other questions about minors and kids. So if you guys are on the chat right now, definitely feel free to start asking some questions. Looks like we got some newbies in here, and you know, so Andrew, I know he says, I used to make $150 a night. Now it's hard to make $100 with the new Lyft prime time. So that's definitely the feedback we've been hearing. I mean, I guess one of the positives is, you know, Uber, for example, they released this new surge, but they're already making tweaks that at least are making it seem more driver friendly. Isn't that right, Christian?
Yeah, so we saw that when Uber first rolled out their new surge, that if you were heading towards the area and you got a request from within the surge, you wouldn't get the surge. But they've already noticed this, and they've changed it to where you will get the request. And then they're also working on a way to try and make the long trips make more sense. So instead of only getting $2, you get more of the fare. Lyft hasn't quite done this yet for their new primetime because it's a lot newer. They're still kind of working out the kinks, but yeah, it's definitely going to evolve a bit.
Okay, cool. Well, so we got some good questions coming in here. I see Jason says, did the Shell program pay off at all? So I'm assuming you're referring, I'm actually not sure what you're referring to as the Shell program, but I think that there are a lot of, kind of, what do you call them, rewards programs that are affiliated with Shell, right? Like I know here in California, Vaughn's, I think, has a partnership with Shell, and maybe some Ralphs have a partnership with a different chain. So that's always an option. If your grocery store that you already do your shopping at has a partnership, that's one way to save on gas. Personally, I use Gas Buddy to just sort of find the cheapest gas station in my area, unless I'm near my house, which I kind of know where the cheapest gas station usually is. Christian, any quick tips on saving money on gas?
Gas Buddy is good because it allows you to sort of like work on a rewards program that's independent of branding. So like I use Shell. So Lyft has a partnership with Shell's so that if you're like a platinum driver, you get like, I think 15 cents off a gallon or something. It's pretty decent.
Yeah.
But like 15 cents off a gallon at Shell is just basically normal prices at Arco.
Yeah.
So, I'd rather just use Gas Buddy or something, or Costco and fill up there. That's kind of like the best bet.
Yeah, I think the best strategy is to find the cheapest gas you can find and then see if that adds on. Like maybe you find that there's a Shell in your area that has the cheapest gas, and then, you can add that on, right? But I would go for cheapest gas first. And, honestly, I think it's pretty, I don't know if this is obvious, but I've definitely found in the areas that aren't as nice, gas is cheaper. So, I mean, when you're driving, if you're driving in a city like Los Angeles and you happen to do a ride, into an area that isn't as desirable or whatever, maybe that's the time that you should fill up. So definitely, keep an eye on that. We'll keep covering that because, I saw a driver ask that will Uber and Lyft raise rates when gas prices go up? And, in the past, there's always fluctuations in gas prices, I think over the past 4 or 5 years, but it's never been as steep as what we've seen in the past 6 months. And I mean, so far, the answer is no. I think that they, Uber and Lyft haven't even really acknowledged that gas prices are going up pretty steadily.
Let me get you on that one. So Uber in California, they did raise prices like 5 or 10 cents about a month ago in LA and the Bay Area, but those price increases just haven't like translated to the rest of like California.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that there was no messaging that said that was for gas prices or for increasing gas prices or anything like that.
Yeah, and I also don't think that the amount that they increased it really makes up for like the increase in gas prices anyways.
Exactly. Okay. Cool. So lots of good questions coming in right now. Oh, another update too. I saw that Maestro, and so Anthony asked, Maestro just announced a new update. I didn't like it before. Is this new release any better? So Maestro, I literally just saw an email from them, I think either yesterday morning or this morning, where they're adding mileage tracking and a couple other cool features. So I'm excited to try that out. If you guys aren't familiar with Maestro, it allows drivers to simultaneously drive for both Uber and Lyft at the same time, all hands-free. So it's sort of like a personal assistant for drivers. It's only available on Android right now, but definitely one of the most popular apps we've seen for drivers. So I guess, Anthony, to answer your question, it does sound like this app is incrementally better because it adds that mileage tracking component. But I haven't tested out myself since it literally just came out. Let's see. Okay, here's a good question. Al Sadler says, how in the world do you remain as positive as you are considering all the rideshare news? So let's see, Christian, you want to start off with that, or you want me to take it?
You can go for that one. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, I think that in general, if you guys look at all of the content that we're producing, whether it's on the YouTube channel or whether it is on the blog or whatever it might be, we're never telling you should or shouldn't do something, right? I'm never saying, I mean, I guess there's obviously, we want everyone to drive for Uber and Lyft, but I'm never saying that, because of this, you should no longer drive for Uber and Lyft, right? You won't see any videos like that from me. I think that's really, kind of a personal choice that for all of you, I want to try, and Christian, this is what I kind of tell him all the time. I want to give you guys the best information possible, that if you want to do this job, if you want to make more money, as much money as possible, that's the information that I want to give. And so that's really kind of my, sort of stance behind all the content that we're creating. And I mean, I guess it kind of depends on, what news you're looking at. Cause, I think in 2017, there was no doubt Uber had a ton of bad news, bad press, but I was kind of joking with Christian the other day. I mean, they haven't done a lot of bad stuff lately. I mean, there's this new surge that drivers don't like and new primetime, but they've actually made a lot of small positive increases. I would almost, which is kind of like taboo to say, but what do you think, Christian?
Well, I don't think I'm as positive as you are. I'm more of a not positive.
I agree, and that's why I keep you around. It balances me out.
Yeah. But for me, it's like I think a couple of years ago when I started driving and I drove full time for a few years, and kind of started working with you here. I'm still really interested in what the future of rideshare or even the gig economy is going to bring. And regardless of what the situation is on the ground and what rates are right now, which I mean, it's tough. It's a tough job. The margins are very thin right now. It's hard to be positive. Anyways, if I can do anything to help people like avoid any of maybe a lot of the mistakes I made when I first got started, just like little small things, that's really useful. And then in general, I've been here for a while now. I've seen what's going on with like, say pricing or surge or in this and that. So, I want to be able to put that in the perspective and help others,
Definitely. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, so we've got some good questions coming in here. I see Swabby Swab. I love everyone's screen name. I think mine is kind of lame. I think it's just the Rideshare guy or Harry Campbell. Everyone gets pretty creative with their chat names. And he says, for those of you who don't have Rideshare insurance, I got mine today through Allstate, and it only cost me $6 more a month, and State Farm was $14 more a month. So Allstate, I'm actually a really big fan of Allstate's policy and State Farm. Actually, I think they're probably the two best rideshare insurance products, because State Farm, if you get into an accident while driving with Uber or Lyft, you can actually go through State Farm for your collision, right? So you can make a claim with State Farm instead of having to go through Uber's insurance. And with Allstate, they actually cover the difference in deductibles. So let's say you're driving for Lyft and you have Allstate rideshare insurance. You get into an accident while driving for Lyft. Let's say you don't have Allstate, you would actually be on the hook for a $2,500 collision deductible, whether it's your fault or not. Now, if it's the other driver's fault, you might be able to get that money back, but you have to front it. With Allstate rideshare insurance, if you have, let's say, a $500 collision deductible on your Allstate policy, they cover the difference, the $2,000 difference. That's definitely, I think a huge bonus for that Allstate and State Farm policy. Let's see. So we've got By Felicia says Allstate quoted me $192 just for liability, a lot higher than my current insurance. So I don't know if you currently have regular insurance or rideshare insurance, but I mean, definitely shop around. I think that's the biggest thing with rideshare insurance is that you're going to want to basically compare options. I don't know exactly why some companies, for Allstate, some people it might be $12 a month, for others it might be $100 a month. I just shared a link to our rideshare insurance marketplace where you can see all the options by your state and recommended agents. And basically what I recommend is go get a quote with all of them, because then you can see who's going to save you the most. It seems like a lot of people are interested in saving money today, huh? Gas, rideshare insurance, everything, huh, Christian?
Oh yeah. Yes, they are.
So let's see. Gromito says, Harry, I have experience with a claim with Allstate rideshare insurance, so feel free to share that. And Dave says, do you think Uber or Lyft will give their drivers a discount as passengers? I haven't seen this, but they do give out, obviously, your first ride free as a passenger. So, I mean, of course, when you're signing up, that's actually my number one piece of advice, our YouTube video that we have. It's to basically, if you're thinking about driving for Uber and Lyft, it's to take a ride as a passenger, because you can learn so much. Christian, I know you take some rides as passengers. Is there anything you found or stood out when you're taking a ride as a passenger that you've sort of learned and, that would help with driving?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing was, when I first got started, I was just a driver. I hadn't taken many rides, but, after driving for about a year, I did end up taking some rides, and you can see like other people's setups. You can see like how dirty or clean other people's cars are, kind of like how experienced, like maybe sometimes how awkward conversation can get, or how awkward it can be when it's just like pure silence. So I think like for me, it taught me how to be better at like gauging when to talk to passengers, so
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
reading when they didn't want
That's
to
a
be
good
talked to.
point. And honestly,
Yeah.
one of the things I found that's super useful is like I'm not in none of my videos, I don't think, or your videos, Christian, we're never recommending, that you go out and buy a ton of gum and mints and candy and, like provide all this, like amazing experience,
No
all these
way.
extras to drivers. But I think that by going out and taking rides as passenger, you can actually see that 90% of drivers, like they don't even shake out their floor mats. Right? Like that's free. That takes, 30 seconds in between rides. A lot, when you have 10, 20 passengers in there a day, there's a lot of crap that gets into the floor mats. Like when you step into a car, I like to think about like what surfaces cover the most area, right? So when you step into a car, obviously the seats, the covers and all that, right? And so I'm not saying that you need to go out and like clean those and, get a car wash every day or whatever it might be, but just think about like what are most drivers not doing and what little action can I do that's going to make me stand out from 70, 80, 90% of drivers, because I can guarantee you, a lot of drivers are not even willing to simply get, a little air freshener or, whatever it might be to kind of keep their car smelling fresh. Like I've gotten into some pretty bad smelling Uber cars,
Yeah.
and, maybe these drivers don't even realize it since they're sitting in their own, smell for the whole day.
The floor mats thing is such a good like tip, because I think I started every day by beating out the floor mats, and like so for record, I had black carpet the whole time. I didn't like cover it all with like stuff, right? Just beating the floor mats. I could go like a week without washing the car, and I never got dinged for like cleanliness once.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Andrew says, I'm one of the 10%. I clean and detail my car every day. Yes. I mean, there's really simply, what I like to invest in are things like, what do you call these? These microfiber cloths, because, in between car washes, you can just give it like a nice wipe down, with your cloth. I mean, that takes 2 minutes and it's free. And a lot of times, if you're smart, you do it in between trips. You don't need to do it before or after. Do it in your downtime, right? I have a little handy handheld vacuum that I sometimes keep in the back of my car. I know some cars even now have that, right? Keep that in your car so you can just, vacuum in your downtime, stretch your legs, get out there a little bit. I mean, I think these are honestly pretty simple things that I may not have figured out on my own, but since I get into other Uber cars and they're so damn dirty, I'm like, why doesn't this guy clean it, right? One Love says, WeatherTech mats are the best. Yeah, definitely a fan of WeatherTech mats. So let's talk about some other issues that are coming on. Robert says, all of you who are eligible, don't sleep on USAA. That's a great tip. We've heard really good feedback from USAA, and it's like very minimal to add that for rideshare insurance. And Bob says, I had a minor accident during Uber, called State Farm, took care of it, under $1,000, nothing on my record. So I think you guys are sort of confirming, right, that it's nice if you can get on with State Farm rideshare insurance, Allstate, things like that. Mike Arroyo says, I use both Uber and Lyft apps when driving to maximize earnings. There are still long waits. So, Mike, I'm assuming that you're driving in a smaller market, right, Christian?
Mike is in Tampa Bay. I asked him earlier.
Okay, so Mike's in Tampa Bay, which is definitely, a smaller to medium-sized market. It's not going to be the tens of millions of people like in Los Angeles or San Francisco. And I mean, it's definitely a no-brainer to drive for both Uber and Lyft in the smaller markets and, use an app like Maestro, because now you're obviously increasing your chances of getting a request. But I think in addition, the biggest thing I see between the small and the big markets are going to be the times and places you drive. In San Francisco or LA on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 or 3 p.m., you might still easily be able to get rides. They may not be on surge and may not be super lucrative, but definitely I found in the smaller markets, it kind of makes sense to think about when and where you're driving. What are your thoughts, Christian?
So I actually weirdly have like a lot of knowledge about driving in Tampa after this week, because I did the whole article on, Lyft's new primetime in Tampa. And, I would definitely recommend driving for obviously both apps at the same time. If you can use Maestro, use it. In addition to Uber and Lyft, try to find like any other, like say smaller sort of rideshare apps that maybe aren't Uber and Lyft, something like Wings, if it's there, or someone in here just mentioned like Bounce. I don't know who else is in Tampa, but like literally anything to fill time, because the busy times for Tampa are basically airport trips, college related stuff, kind of like downtown area, but it's not like, but most people in Tampa still drive. So it's not like SF.
Yeah, that's definitely some good advice, and I think we have a podcast. I want to say we have a podcast that's on a small town driver. I'll see if I can find that and share a link in the show notes because there's definitely some differences there. Truthmaker says, well, I use a lint roller to keep my car clean, aka ghetto vac. So I like that. That definitely makes sense. And Andrew says 1 star. He always 1 star girls who wear glitter dresses. I'm assuming because it gets all over your car. And then everyone probably thinks, that you have that you had a bunch of glitter in the back seat. Let's see. Brian has a good question here. I know you'll be able to answer this, Christian. He says, "Can I write off mileage when renting through Uber and Hertz?"
You cannot. So the reason you cannot write off mileage for a rental is because the IRS standard mileage deduction rate incorporates the depreciation of owning a business asset. So since you do not own this asset and you cannot deduct the depreciation, you cannot take this standard mileage deduction.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, I think the best way, that's perfect explanation. So, with the rentals, you can't, but with leases and owning your own car, obviously you can write off your mileage. And, that makes a big difference, obviously, for drivers who are putting 1,000 miles a week on their car. Obviously, we kind of are past tax time now, but definitely if you guys aren't tracking your mileage, we highly, highly recommend that just because you can offset so much of your earnings, not only your mileage, though, but once you get good is, tracking your mileage and tracking your expenses. We talk to a lot of drivers who are kind of struggling around tax time. But I mean, to be frank, I'm a very aggressive person when it comes to doing my taxes. And, there are a lot of times, right, that, I could see, right, when I'm going out to meet other drivers or to talk to them, right, there's a lot of deduction opportunities and you really should be able to offset a lot of your income. We've got a good YouTube video from Jay where he sort of walks through how to do your taxes with TurboTax. We kind of recommend Stride Tax is a great free app that helps with mileage tracking on Android and iOS. And then if you want something that's a little more holistic, we'll give you a little bit more in-depth view of your profit and loss. Can't talk right now. Your expenses, your earnings. If you want to compare actual expenses versus standard mileage to see which is going to get you the better deduction, that's definitely an option. I know, Christian, so QBSC, they're a big advertiser on the site, full disclosure, but I know, Christian, you use them and you've used them a bunch. You're very familiar with it. Any thoughts there?
I mean, so in mileage in general, if there's one thing you're tracking that's not your money, you need to be tracking your mileage. Like hands down, doesn't matter if you rent, doesn't matter if you own, because when you track your mileage, not only are you kind of keeping track of how much you're driving for tax purposes, but you're also kind of, measuring your efficiency on the road. So me personally, when I got off the road every night, I would see how much I made. And I wouldn't think so much in like terms of hours I drove, but I'd think about how many miles I drove. So if I, made $300 and I can see my odometer has an extra 150 miles on it, I could be like, all right, so I kind of average $2 per mile. That's pretty good. But if I see that, I made $150 and I drove 300 miles, then I knew I kind of just wasted a bunch of time. Yeah. So miles is so important to track.
Yeah, so I see a good question here from Mike Steenbeck. He says, Jay, who's one of our contributors at the Rideshare Guy, recently wrote a piece where he revealed that he is generating approximately 10% of his earnings in tips. What effort is afoot to teach drivers how to increase tips? So definitely, Jay is probably the best person to answer that. He's got an article about that on the Rideshare Guy. And I know he also has a video that was just released on Sunday. So if you guys want to check our YouTube channel, you can actually see that video from Jay about how he's increasing tips. But really the long and short of it is I think that he found that Lyft tends to get much better tips on Lyft since, historically they've always had the tipping option. So passengers are going to, kind of tip better. And then, so he found Lyft was better than Uber. And then I think he had some good tips around, I'm kind of trying to remember his video at this point, but he had some good tips around basically the conversations you're having with passengers, the attitude that you're bringing, things like that. Anything you want to add there, Christian?
Yeah, so I think I rented a get around vehicle about a month ago, and I made pretty good money for tips on Uber, surprisingly. And I think like a big part of it is that right now for a lot of the service bar from drivers is so low that there's actually a decent opportunity that just by you don't have to impress people, but just by like being polite and having like emotional intelligence, you can get like decent amount of tips. I got great tips. I think they did like 12% tips just on Uber of all places on like a Thursday night. And yeah, I was pretty surprised.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's great advice. And again, this is really where I think kind of understanding your competition and, taking those rides as a passenger can really benefit you. And again, I think that, I deduct actually all of my rides as a passenger on Uber because, I'm doing research and talking to other drivers. So, for me, that's another deduction opportunity. But like I said, right, understanding what other drivers are doing a good or bad job of and thinking how you can stand out. When we had a video series here on the YouTube channel where I tested out a newer model Ford Fusion Hybrid. And one of the things I actually found with that Ford Fusion Hybrid is that almost every passenger who got into my car made some type of comment, some type of remark that, wow, this car is way nicer than your typical Uber car, or this car is way nicer than my typical Lyft car. And, I didn't do a ton of rides. I mean, I did probably less than 100 rides in that car. So I didn't have a huge sample size to compare. And, I don't want to say that I got more tips while in a nicer car, but I could definitely see that, maybe you don't want to buy a $10,000 nicer car, but maybe you want to get a car that, has some nicer features that, make you stand out relative to others. I think definitely now that both Uber and Lyft have the tipping option, there are ways that, it's not going to be 50% of your income. But I mean, if you're not making 10% of your income in tips, I would definitely start thinking about that. So let's see. I saw a couple good questions in here from, let's see, where to go. Okay, Brian, he says, Harry, what do you do with all the referral money you make? Seriously, are you putting a lot of it back into the business? I appreciate you being a sort of spokesman for us drivers. So yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously we monetize the site, by signing up new drivers. We have advertisers like QuickBooks Self-Employed, Stride Tax, and things like that. So you can obviously see that if you go to the rideshareguy.com, you definitely see we've got some ads up there. But, I would say that I do try to invest a lot back into the business. Christian, the guy that you're looking at right now, is basically putting in 40 hours a week for me up there in San Francisco. And, he's doing a lot of the content. He probably spent 20, 30 hours on this article about Uber's new surge and Lyft's new primetime. So I think definitely trying to do a combination of, for me, the blog, the YouTube channel, my book, that is my business. So of course, I'm trying to save some of that money so that I can pay for my family, and pay for the food I eat and things like that. But at the same time, definitely trying to invest, in people like Christian. You've probably noticed, that now we have a bunch of contributors on the blog, on the YouTube channel. And a lot of these guys, I pay anywhere from $100 to $200 per article, per video. And so that really adds up because we're doing a lot of content. And I also have someone behind the scenes. Her name is Melissa. Melissa, if you're watching right now, shout out. Hey, thank you for all your hard work. I don't think she actually watches the YouTube lives, but she reviews, edits all the YouTube videos, schedules all of the content, plans all the content, works with all our guest posters, things like that. So long story short, it's a little complicated, but I'm actually going to have a really good video coming out on YouTube pretty soon about how I make $1,000 a month on the YouTube channel, or $1,000 a month plus, really, because we make more than that, but that's kind of the number I used. And I recently did an interview on the Pat Flynn YouTube channel, and we're gonna have a podcast coming out that really goes into details about how I monetize the site and really gives a lot of behind the scenes there. So the YouTube video is already live and the podcast will be out soon. So I know that was kind of a long answer, but I wanted to answer that question for you, and hopefully that makes sense. Brian says, I see you're increasing and expanding content. Thanks. And yeah, we're definitely trying to cover a lot of new topics. The bird charging stuff, I'm paying Ezra on my team now. He's, we're paying him some good money to create bird content right now and working with me. And let's see, Mike says he's talking about an article or video that Jay did. I'm not sure what the question is there, Mike, but let's see, what other questions do we have? Mary says Uber Eats and Postmates can be very good for us if the pay, since request is accepted. Dave says tipping may be popular in the West Coast, but in the Northeast of USA, people don't tip no matter how hard you try to please the passengers. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that, Christian?
That sounds... I'm assuming by Northeast, he's referring to like Boston and New York. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. David here, David Sincere says, I don't know, Washington, D.C. metro area, driving for Uber. I've always gotten tips. I'm just getting more now that's on. I don't know that I've personally seen that, some cities are better or worse for tipping. I would almost argue that, in a place like New York or LA or San Francisco, my guess would be that tipping would be better because, there's sort of that service culture. There are a bunch of waiters or a bunch of bar people, that are kind of familiar with that. But I think at the same time, I don't think it's going to be, in one city, people are getting 10 to 15% of their income in tips, and another, it's 1 to 2%. I think definitely, go out and take some rides as a passenger and really talk to other drivers. I think that's the thing. A lot of people, they see someone else doing something and they say, oh, that's an outlier. That's not possible. But, even though they may be in the top percentile of someone who's getting, like Jay, for example, he's earning a lot of money and doing a lot, and you may not be able to make $2,800 in a week, but a lot of the strategies that he's using and the way that he's thinking about it are going to make you a top earner in your city. So that's really what my takeaway would be there.
On tips too, just something I wanted to kind of elaborate on, Harry, is, I've noticed that people tend to tip at certain times of the day, or on certain kind of like situations in a ride. So, if you're taking somebody to work in the morning, they're going to be a lot less likely to tip because they're viewing that sort of, that ride and that transaction as a business expense, like a cost of getting to work. I have received far more tips in the afternoon when people are going out to eat, or between like, say, like 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. when people are going out to do things that they like. So like, it's kind of like people are more generous when they're having fun and they're less stressed. So like the weekends tend to be better. And that doesn't apply to college students, because college students absolutely, under no circumstance, almost whatsoever, ever tip.
Good
Unless, and the way for certain that a college student isn't going to tip you is when they say, hey bro, I'll tip you.
I think that probably applies to everyone. Whenever people have told me they're gonna tip me, I don't think I've ever gotten a tip, literally not once. But I saw a good comment about what you mentioned. Is I definitely have noticed, there's like when I'm here in LA, there are a couple casinos, and when I pick people up at casinos, whether a couple times whether they won or lost, I got a big tip. And so there's definitely times and places that I think if you're targeting those tips, start to think about those patterns that are happening and things like that. I want to answer a couple questions pretty quickly, just so we can knock out a lot of questions that aren't as long. Adam says, how many rides required to stay active? And so Uber for sure doesn't actually have a policy anymore that requires you to do a certain number of rides or any rides to stay active. So you can literally do no rides and they will never deactivate you as long as you keep your documents active. So your insurance up to date and your vehicle inspection and also your registration. I think Lyft has a similar policy, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to stay active there. So that shouldn't be a big worry. Gromito says, I hope you got the referral money from Uber since I got Zip from the earnings guarantee. Yeah, and this is a program that I hate with Uber for new drivers. Instead of offering sign-up bonuses, most cities, they now give you an earnings guarantee, which is a whole nother topic that's kind of confusing and drivers don't like it. So I don't want to talk about it, but I can definitely check. Shoot me an email, gromito.harry@therideshareguy.com. And if I did get any referral money from your sign up and you didn't get anything, we can actually, we'll end up splitting that, or I will split it with you. That's typically what I do in that situation. Let's see, we got a couple shout outs for Jay. Yeah, Jay has definitely been doing some great videos on the YouTube channel and also on the rideshareguy.com. Let's see. Alan says, hey, Harry, how about something about getting into rideshare delivery for folks that don't have a lot of money? Well, I think actually one of the nice things about getting into rideshare or delivery is that you don't need a lot of money. Really, as long as you have a smartphone, a vehicle, and can pass a background check, you can drive for Uber and Lyft. Now, I'm assuming that, if you don't have a lot of money, maybe you don't have a car, right? I mean, I think a lot of people have smartphones, but I think the car might be the biggest thing there. And, I know we've covered a lot of the, right, what are the sort of, you want to list off a few of the options there, and then I'll link to our Uber vehicle marketplace, Christian.
Yeah. So first question I always have for someone who doesn't have a car yet is what market are they driving in? And if you're driving in a market that can reasonably support renting a car for about $200 a week, then I would, look at that option. And, You can acquire a rental through Hertz or Express Drive. I would, if I was in someone's shoes and Lyft was strong in the market, I probably would go with Express Drive because you could get most of the
Yeah,
fee waived. And if you're gonna rent, you're gonna have to drive full time. I would recommend driving full time and just do whatever you can to save money to purchase a car. I'd call it a minimally viable vehicle. And something for $4,000, that's a Toyota or a Honda 2005 under 150,000 miles. And then that way you can pay a lot less for things like gas and ownership, and you don't have to pay that $250 weekly fee. But on top of that, you can drive for both apps freely. You can deduct the mileage, which is really advantageous for taxes. And maybe if you are in a market that doesn't support a $250 per week rental or lease payment, then consider doing delivery, where you can get a much cheaper car or a bicycle. For me, I'm kind of starting to put on pounds now that I don't like go outside as much. I'm a blogger, so like I've been looking at doing delivery on bikes, so that way I can earn extra money. It's like a gym membership that pays me. If that works.
Even charging the Bird scooters and the Lime scooters right now, you actually don't even need a car or anything really. If you live in one of the service zones, you can. There are a lot of chargers right now that I'm talking to, in my Facebook group for Bird chargers, that they're just walking around and stacking the scooters on top of each other, riding 3 at a time. So that's definitely an option there. Okay, so Grom It Too says that I'm pronouncing his name wrong. It's a reference to the Wallace and Gromit movie claymation series of movie shorts. Unfortunately, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I will take your word for it. Truthmaker says, can't you use a scooter for food delivery? So I think by scooter, you're meaning more of like one of the actual, like moped scooters. And yeah, that's definitely a great option. I've ordered, especially now that I have my baby in the house, I've been ordering a lot of Postmates and DoorDash and all those kind of lazy food apps. And I don't know that I've ever seen someone in LA deliver food on a scooter, but it would make a lot of sense for sure. Let's see. Kamuela says, waitlisted on Uber going on 7 weeks, not sure what's going on. That sounds like it may be a background check issue. So definitely, if you're having issues there, you can always email us and we can go, Harry@therideshareguy.com. We can go over the specifics, but 7 weeks sounds like a very long time. I would definitely probably go in person to a support center and do that. Let's see, what other questions do we have going on? Anam says, hey, Harry, is your book available in bookstores in Indy? And yeah, it actually should be. So I've been kind of lazy. I haven't actually gone into a Barnes & Noble or Amazon bookstore to check and see if my book is there, but my publisher did say it's in there. So I'm going to say it's probably in there. And if not, you can yell at me and get mad at me. Jay says, Bird isn't here in New York City. Andrew says, I know a guy who will deliver with bike and he is fast AF. Yeah, so bikes are definitely an option in certain areas. So you can definitely check that out. Steven says, once your car is paid off, do you still get mileage deduction? So if you own the car, it doesn't matter whether you're leasing or not, or sorry, it doesn't matter whether you have a car payment or not, you still get that mileage deduction, right, Christian?
Sorry, can you repeat that one? I just had a little
yeah, he says, Steven says, once your car is paid off, do you still get mileage deduction? And you can take the mileage deduction, regardless of whether you paid your car off or not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that's the great thing about the mileage deduction is when the IRS calculates it, they assume you financed the car and that you have like a $40,000 car. So like you can deduct that sort of thing. But, if you go out and get a $4,000 car, it's all paid off, then you can just deduct it forever. If your car lasts 10 years, you can just deduct 50 whatever cents per mile, and take that huge gap of a deduction. It's beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's actually, that's kind of one of the reasons why that mileage deduction is so valuable, because you can basically take it indefinitely. Now, I know there's some issues, like, for example, if you ever went to go and sell your car, I think you would have to like pay it back or something like that. So don't take my advice there. You're probably gonna have to talk to someone smarter than me when that comes up. But yeah, definitely that kind of indefinite mileage deduction is pretty nice. Rideshare Confession says, Harry, do you know if you can drive plus only for Lyft? Now, I know on Uber, you can select XL only, or you can select only if your car is eligible for those and you don't have to take Uber X or Uber Pool. I'm not sure about Lyft though. Christian, do you know for sure? I'd assume that you can do it since you can do it on Uber.
Um, I'm not entirely sure to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that's a good question. Rideshare Confessions, I'm going to look into that for you. And if you want to shoot me an email with a subject line, Lyft Plus or something like that, I'll make sure I get the answer for you for that, because that's a good question. I don't have an XL car, so I'm not 100% sure. But Glenn says saturation in LA, surge is getting smaller and smaller. Your thoughts? I feel like this comes up from time to time. It's really hard for me to tell or say that, surge is getting smaller and smaller. I think people always kind of have that feeling, but, I don't know that I've noticed anything or heard anything from drivers. So I'm not sure I have a great answer. I can't really confirm one way or the other there. What do you think, Christian, in general, when you hear drivers talking about, there's less and less surge? I mean, I think in general, we always feel like there's less surge, but what do you think?
All right. So, in general, during the summer, surge does die down a lot, unless you're at a beach town like in San Diego. But I don't really think that it's just really difficult to compare apples to oranges, because there's always a different amount of drivers who are presently driving. So in the summer, we get a lot of people who would normally be in school come on. You get teachers who, I mean, obviously teachers aren't honestly earning enough money as it is, so they go drive Uber during the summer. Students get online, they drive in the summer because they got to pay their student loans, and we don't know how much that costs. So there's a glut of drivers everywhere. And there's just less like college students going out and partying because I guess they're all driving. So yeah.
Definitely. So Jay says, is there a book giveaway tonight? And yes, there is a book giveaway tonight. Well, it'll happen in about 5 minutes. So for all of you guys, looks like we're doing well. A lot of people watching live right now. Thank you for joining. We'll go ahead and do that book giveaway in just a few minutes here. I want to answer a few more questions, as many as possible. Malachi says, has anyone experienced Uber in the Southeast? And yeah, I actually, a year or two ago when I went to Bali, I did take a ride with Uber down there, and I have to say that it worked pretty well. So I know it works in Bali and some of the other Southeast Asia. I think Grab, though, is a much bigger company there. So definitely keep that in mind. Monchis520 says, if the rates went up in Vegas, but my rates stayed the same, what can I do to get my rates up? Well, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do to get your rates up. But for example, in Vegas, there's an app called the Kickback app, since a lot of the weed dispensaries and a lot of the strip clubs will actually give basically kickbacks to Uber and Lyft drivers. So I know that's a really popular app with a lot of drivers there, and you're able to, make pretty good sort of side income because of that. So that's definitely something that you can check out. Alexis says last 500 rides. I'm assuming Alexis, you're referring to your rating. So on Uber, oh wow, my little Amazon device thought I was talking to her. I'm not going to say the name again, but yeah, Lyft, they count your rating. So your driver rating is based off your last 100 rides, and your Uber rating is based off your past 500 rides. So I think right now on Uber, I'm a 4.89. Christian, what are you?
In Uber, I'm a 4.87. Or no, 4.92.
Oh, that's pretty good.
On Lyft, I'm a real 5, like full
there
5.
You go. Nice. Yeah. So let's see, we've got a few other questions. Any news on Uber Eats? I mean, Uber Eats is still around. I think that it's, definitely out of all the food delivery services, it is popular with drivers just because, if you sign up for UberX, it's like basically a one-click opt-in to go and do Uber Eats. But, drivers have complained and that they don't like, having to go from passengers to food because it might stink up your car. Let's see, we've got some questions coming in here. Andrew says surge is dead here in San Diego with the new beta program. So yeah, definitely, you guys, stay tuned to the rideshareguy.com tomorrow, and we'll probably release a YouTube video later in the week or early next week about that. Part-time driver says, no, you can't drive plus only on Lyft. And let's see, what other questions do we have coming in? Is there an easy, inexpensive way to offer free Wi-Fi to passengers? So I know on my phone, I'm running an Android, what do I have? A Galaxy S8 Plus. So this is like the 1-year-old Galaxy model. I can set up a mobile hotspot and passengers can sync to that. I've never actually tried offering it though to my passengers. I think there would still be, enough data and enough connection for me to do all my navigation and, sync up with the Uber driver app and Lyft driver app. But that would be, one way to do that. What are your thoughts, Christian? Wi-Fi?
No, that sounds like too much work then for like what it's worth. Like,
yeah, I mean, it does sound like a little work, but also at the same time, I mean, if you, let's say you already have a mobile hotspot on your phone and you drive in an area, you get great service. Like I know that I've never gotten into an Uber or Lyft that offers Wi-Fi. And I could imagine, I would imagine, maybe even you get in, if I'm a passenger, I get into a car and there's a sign that says, hey, I've got free Wi-Fi for you. I may not even use it because it's only a 5 or 10 minute ride, but it kind of like that right there, like grabs my attention and kind of makes you stand out. So, I would almost say that maybe it's something you guys try, if it's easy. I wouldn't go out and buy like a $50 a month plan just to do it, but you can definitely, I like ideas like that because, those are things that other people aren't doing. And typically when you're the only one doing something, you either have a really good idea or a really bad idea. So I'm not sure which one it would be, but it is what it is.
I've seen drivers do it before. Like they'll have like a sign in their car.
Okay, cool. So the XL specialist says, get a Karma hotspot, free 100 megs to the user. That sounds cool. Mike says the CEO of ride-hailing giant Uber has hailed the explosive growth of the company's food delivery business, which he said is now at a $6 billion bookings run rate. I'm assuming that's a quote from some article you read. And yeah, definitely. It seems like out of all the food delivery apps, Uber Eats seems to be, one of the most popular with customers and with drivers, just because I think they have that built-in audience of customers and also that built-in audience of drivers. So Andrew, he has a good question here that I actually I'm going to make a YouTube video about this, I think, but he says, what do you tell people who want to go to a drive-through? Christian, why don't you, since we're running out of time, why don't you quickly give your answer and then I'll give my answer too.
Oh, okay. Okay. See, I start with no. I usually just say that we don't really get paid enough to go through the drive-through.
Yeah.
And right now it's really busy. I need to pay my rent tomorrow and I just can't do it. I'm sorry. If they say I'll tip you, I say, I'm sorry, I can't go through the drive-through. I don't let any people in my car. If they come irate about it, I just kick them out.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the big thing too is obviously, it's a little bit challenging, especially if you're a newer driver, right? You're like, oh, this passenger gets to rate me. So at the end of the trip, right, if you're an asshole to them, they're probably going to give you a low rating. So, I mean, I think for me, it's kind of all about diffusing the situation. And so I kind of handle it pretty similarly to Christian. I would say that, hey, if it's not a busy time, I might be more flexible. And, to be honest, if it's not busy and I'm hungry, I might actually do it. But if it's a busy time, surging or, late night, and that's typically when these drive-through runs happen. So, that's kind of the situation I'm going to handle. But I kind of say the same thing as Christian. I say, unfortunately, I'd love to be able to do this ride, but, we just don't get paid much to do for waiting, right? So if we go through a drive-through, I actually make less than minimum wage, right? So saying stuff like that really kind of gets this passenger to empathize with you. And of course, you might get the passenger who's just a total, a-hole, and they're not going to care what you say. And in that case, you get a little bit more stern with them. But, I think drive-throughs, and these are sort of the choices you have to make. And that's kind of what, really a lot of our content is about. And, what I'm trying to educate drivers about is you guys are a business owner and not every customer is going to be a profitable endeavor for you, right? You have to kind of understand at a certain point, like, okay, I might take a little bit of hit on my rating, but at the same time, it's surging right now. And so I'm missing out on $20, for example, right? If I'm doing it, if you're only missing out on $1 or $2, maybe it's not worth it. But, those are sort of the decisions, the choices that you have to make. Let's see. Mary says, please answer my question regarding Uber Eats. Why they don't pay since you accept the request? Unfortunately, sometimes the time distance to get to pick up address is longer than the drop off. And I want to say that I just saw an email that Uber Eats is changing the way they pay on Uber Eats deliveries. But I mean, I'm not sure why they do that, but definitely, I mean, I guess it sort of is what it is. Fortunately, there are a lot of different food delivery apps that you can work for. I mean, there's there's Postmates, there's DoorDash, there's Instacart, there's Uber Eats, there's Amazon Flex, there's Caviar, right? There's all these different options. I mean, they're all going to be, the gist of all of them is the same. I don't know if one is way better than another, but I think definitely, find the one that works for you and, go with that one. Do you think there's one that stands out, Christian, in the delivery space, or?
Yeah, actually in California, I really want to try delivering for Ease, their cannabis delivery service. I think there could be some opportunities for good tips there.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a good point. I saw someone from Ease was actually spamming my Bird Chargers Facebook group earlier, and I had to delete their comment and ban them. But that's why you mentioned earlier, Christian, right? Especially in these smaller to mid-sized markets. Now, Ease may not be in every market, but I mean there are these opportunities with these. You might maybe like delivering weed to a bunch of people. Like that might sound a little strange, but the job is pretty easy, right? We've talked to a bunch of people who are doing it, so definitely just kind of staying aware, obviously following our channel, talking to other drivers. I think that's kind of key. That's, how you can learn about it. So I'm going to answer one last question and then we'll go ahead, do this giveaway and sign off. So Truthmaker says, Harry, don't you think a rideshare convention would be awesome? Las Vegas as a write-off, tons of rideshare industry tool exhibits, seminars. What do you think, Harry? This is actually something that's sort of on my ideal list, some type of convention, either for the rideshare industry or rideshare drivers. And I've also toyed with the idea in my head of doing some sort of online, kind of 1 day or 3 day convention where we're interviewing other drivers and YouTubers and people in the industry and stuff like that. But right now, it's really just on my long list of ideas that I would love to do someday. And as you can imagine, that type of convention is basically a full-time job for probably 1 or 2 people. But it's definitely something I've thought about and I think would be awesome. If you have any ideas, feel free to shoot them my way, though. So I think that we've answered a ton of great questions. One last one, Carlos says, any idea when Maestro will release an Apple iOS version? So, the way that Maestro works is that they actually integrate with the accessibility options on Android, and that option is not available for developers on iOS. So unless Maestro starts partnering directly with a Lyft, for example, which I think would be a no-brainer for Lyft, but Lyft may not want to do that, or Uber directly, they probably won't be available there anytime soon. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. All right, now let's do this giveaway. So I think today we're going to give away my book. Have you read it yet, Christian?
I've skimmed through it. Actually, I was really surprised at like how good it was.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, not saying I wasn't expecting it to, but like it's very detailed. Like I really, especially if you're just getting started, it would be like a great field manual. Actually, if you were to rename the book, it'd be like the field manual for rideshare. You could just open it up and get like anything you need in there. It covers everything.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. And, that's really sort of how I structured the book. So we'll do the giveaway right now. But if you guys are interested in purchasing it, you can find it on Amazon or local bookstores. I frankly do not make much money off these book sales, but I think it's kind of a steal at $9.99. And then, like Christian said, it's great. Really organized for a new driver, or someone just getting started from sort of chapter 1 to the end. And then, but also if you're a more experienced driver, you might flip straight to chapter 5, where we have about 30, 40 pages on how to maximize your earnings. So,
I just got a good idea. If you're driving and you have Harry's book, put your Uber or Lyft referral code on the cover and leave the book for reading material.
There you go. So let's see, Alexis, you can purchase it on Amazon, bookstores, pretty much just type the rideshare guide anywhere into the search box. And so I think for today's giveaway, we'll give out three copies of my new book, the Rideshare Guide. And in order to win, you're going to need to send me an email, harry@therideshareguide.com, subject line, YouTube Live. And within that email, I want to know one tip from you that basically I want to know how you stand out from other drivers. So I think a lot of the themes around today's YouTube Live was talking about, hey, I shake out my floor mats, or, I provide, I don't know, maybe I have water bottles, under my seat in case a passenger asks, or whatever it might be. I'm curious to know what your one tip is that you do, or that you are going to start doing if you're not doing it already, that you think other drivers aren't doing, that really helps you stand out. So shoot me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com, subject line YouTube Live, and give me that one tip that really you think makes you stand out from other drivers. And you'll enter, we'll pick 3 winners, and we'll get your mailing address and send you a copy of the book. I see Rideshare Genius is joining just now. He's only 1 hour and 7 minutes late. Thanks, Ezra. Jay says, as I skimmed through it, that's talking about Christian. No advanced version. There is an ebook. There's a Kindle available for that. But yeah, just want to thank you guys for joining. If this was your first time, welcome. We do these every single month. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. If you didn't, leave a comment below and let me know why. And of course, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to leave a comment below, reach out to me directly. And don't forget to enter the giveaway for the book. Harry, send me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com. Christian, thank you for coming on today. Did you have a good time?
I did. It was good stuff. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Cool. It was a lot of fun, and we will see you guys next month. Take care.
Thanks.